Hey everyone, this is Zan, and welcome to Dominion 6 at a glance. Today we'll talk about middle-aged Pyrene. I'm of the Akalari. They are cavemen with medieval technology who are naturally resistant to fire and ice. They field powerful goat knights, and they have a massive focus on blood magic. They are strong throughout all stages of the game, but they can truly shine in the late game once they can leverage a blood economy. The units of middle-aged Pyrene tend to be of an elite quality. They are more expensive than normal, but that pays for a higher hit point and strength than average. And then they trade a point of magic resistance to get natural fire and ice resistance and 50% dark vision. They have inexpensive crossbows, who also have less precision, and that can matter. Luckily, you can fix it with magic later. For Dominion's 5 veterans, we have heavily armored, naturally resistant two-handed swordsmen, something we all appreciate. And then their sacred unit is the Emerald Knight riding a Mouflon, who has to kind of carry the weight of the early game on their shoulders if other players aren't too excited to have you around. The commanders of Pyrene are pretty good overall. They don't have the best unit leaders in the Castellan or the Marquess, although they are pretty tanky. But they have very good priests in the Perennian Bishop, which can also blood sacrifice. A fantastic workhorse mage in the Flying Sorgina, who can also shapeshift into a stealthy black cat and provide consistent magic at a very high map move. And then they have the capital only, but also forest recruit, Acrobelts, and that's a pretty big deal. The Acrobelts is going to provide you a lot of late game magic, or even mid game magic with the Earth Nature path. And despite their costs, they're actually pretty efficient blood searchers since they have the blood searcher trait. The weakness, I guess, of the nation would be that they don't really have an inexpensive researcher, because although they do have the Perennian Monk, you pay full price for infrastructure, so you're going to need a unforted lab and a temple to recruit one of these guys every 2 turns. And I don't feel like that's very worth it. So you're going to be mostly researching with Sorginas, Bishops, and Acrobelts, and that can be fairly pricey for the amount of research you're getting. So the nation doesn't have any national ritual summons, but I've added a little tab here for these non-national summons that are going to be very, very integral to how the nation's going to play. I feel like you're really going to want to do Call of the Winds to summon Blackhawks as patrol chaff for your blood hunting. And then the results of your blood hunting are mainly going to materialize as Storm Demons, Demon Knights, and occasionally Dark Vines. I know a lot of people don't like these, but their attacks are armor piercing and they scale well with strength. For the national spells of Middle-aged Pyrene, I'm actually going to go a lot more offensive than I usually do. And I'm going to start with Blood Burst, which is not a spell you see often, but I feel the nation has an easy time casting as long as you have the Blood Slaves. And it's essentially a weaker form of Leech, which is unresistible armor negating damage. After that, I'm going to move on to a lot of summons. We're going to summon imps in combat, which are pretty damn strong. They're flying, they have a lot of defense, they have 2 attacks. They're pretty good, but they really start to shine when you cast Bloodlust to increase their strength. Bloodlust is just going to be a battlefield-wide version of Strength of Giants, for example. And that's going to synergize a lot well with your other summons. You're going to have Bind Demon Knights and Storm Demons. You're going to want as many of these as you can possibly get because they're both very, very strong. They both synergize with Bloodlust. And they're going to form the primary ranks of your mid to late game army. Finally, we're going to move away from blood magic. Mistform remains a very strong buff in this game. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about or use magic weapons lately. And that's going to make something like Mistform very, very strong on something tanky like a Demon Knight. Storm and Storm Power kind of go hand in hand. They're going to let your Sorginas do a lot of air magic without having to use a communion. We want to avoid communions if we can because they're already such good mages. And one of the big spells that you'll use with Storm and Storm Power is going to be Thunder Strike, which is a very hard-hitting evocation, which not only is going to likely wipe out the square it hits, but it's going to stun those around it. Be careful of friendly fire. And finally, with your Acrobelts, Barkton and that line of buffs are going to be pretty good because your units are already fire resistant, so there's not as big of a penalty. This includes the Demon Knight too. And then Howl is just the usual ability to get a lot of wolves on the side of the field to distract the enemy, and this is good on really any nation. There are a lot more spells that I can recommend for Pyrene, but I wanted to keep it short. The middle-aged Pyrene Pretender design can actually go a lot of different ways. Personally, I prefer something that's going to help me in the early game, such as this early stats Baphomet. This is what I took on stream in my single player game. And it helped me expand fairly easily. And then the idea of the shock resistance is to help my Emerald Knights fight alongside Sorginas and Storm Demons without worrying too much about friendly fire. Alternatively, you can take Earth Magic instead. That will also provide you some shock resistance after the Pretender wakes up, but let you craft golems in the late game, and that can be pretty important. Alternatively, you can take a defensive Titan. That's going to provide you some path diversity and still let you be able to defeat other players. Expansion just might be a little harder. During your Pretender design, it's definitely important to decide whether you want growth 2 or growth 3 through a Pretender, because it can have a very lasting effect on the nation. I'll actually talk about that later in this video. So their early gameplay is to recruit these hopefully powerfully blessed Sacreds to expand quickly. Feel free to use Emerald counts, their capital only Sacred Knight, to lead expansion parties, since the Capital Mage is also a forest recruit, so it's not too big a deal if you miss some early recruitment. Aim for forest during your expansion just so that you have Acrobelts available later, and especially look out for Lizard Shamans or Jade Amazons, just for path diversity. But if you have to choose between them, always choose the Lizard Shamans. Then just be prepared for a potential attack from multiple players. Going on to the mid game, if no one attacks you, pivot hard into blood hunting and blood summoning. Acrobelts and Sorgina are both very good hunters. If you have a chance, you can go to Construction 5 and craft Sanguine Dowsing Rods to make your blood hunting better. And then just start summoning as many Demon Knights and Storm Demons as you can. Add the Pyrene Swordsman as needed to supplement your armies. But really, you just kind of want to be on the defensive here and work on expanding your blood economy. Be as close to 0 blood slaves as possible every turns because you really want to be efficient in turning your blood slaves into middle game power. As you move on into the late game, you have some of the traditionally strongest paths in the game with your air, nature, earth, and blood magic. So you want to try to leverage these into late game spells like Strength of Gaia for resistance, Fog Warriors, and Army of Lead for protection. That's going to help you win major fights without a lot of losses. At this point, you can start playing very aggressively because you're going to need a lot more land to blood hunt to summon more demons, which are going to help you get more land. Just remember that you have a crippling lack of astral magic, so hopefully you found some astral independent mages, or you can craft golems with an earth astral crosspath. And this is important because your non-demonic units have a lower magic resistance than normal, especially your Mouflon Cavalry, so they might start letting you down a lot more. But overall, ground the world in blood magic, craft boosters for your Blood 4 randoms, and cast Infernal Disease to assassinate people, or just to summon more demons at once. And that ends our glance at Middle Age Pyrene. I feel they're pretty strong, and there was so much more I could have talked about this nation. So much more, actually, that I ended up making a whole second video about terraforming, just due to realizing the synergy that this nation's going to have with terraforming. And this is why in your Pretender design, I highly recommended either choosing whether you want growth 2 or growth 3. So we're going to talk about that in this video here. And with that, I hope to see you guys next time.